The Carolina Storyteller is a campfire-style storytelling podcast covering ghost stories, legends, and true crime. Some content may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi folks, welcome back to the Carolina Storyteller. I am Carolina Storyteller Jonathan Phoenix. Today we are getting ready to end the month of May, and I know I said last week I was getting out of Russia, I was walking away from the Soviet Union, and technically I am, because today's story I'm going to visit the Russian Empire. Today I want to talk about a specific man, but before we get into the story, let me remind everyone, this is the last week. You have until Friday, May 31st, to sign up for the big Patreon giveaway and be part of the team and, get yourself some of those goodies that'll be given away when the episode of the first releases. I'm actually going to record the drop on Friday evening. We're going to roll a dice, see who it was that won, and that person is going to get all the goodies from the giveaway. I've got the CD in from Midgard, Damage. It's a great CD. They did a really good job. It's a great experience. I'm very happy that I have my own copy of it, and I'm very happy that I'm getting to give a copy of it to you in case you've never heard of them. I've got signed autograph photos from cosplayers like Jane SG66. I mean, come on, have you seen her Trunks cosplay? It's phenomenal. All right. We've got gifts from Resin Walk by Dragon Kovac. This lovely dragon trinket holder, stickers from places like Truth or Demons from me. And of course, you're getting a copy of Redcoats and Through the Flames. It's a great giveaway. There's lots of stuff coming your way. All you have to do is go over to patreon.com/thecarolinastoryteller and subscribe and sign up. I mean, you can subscribe for free, or you can subscribe and donate a little bit to the cause and help us continue to make this show as great as it has been, and hopefully better for the future, because I want to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep doing this, but it's not exactly cheap, and it takes a lot to get the stuff to get into, so I would really appreciate any help from you guys that I can get. And in exchange, we have merch, we have all kinds of stuff. So patreon.com/thecarolinastoryteller. Get in the community, get in on the conversation, come talk to us, find out more, get all the exclusive stuff, ad-free shows, all of it at patreon.com/thecarolinastoryteller. Now, with that being said, getting all the way out of all of that, excuse the cough, people. Today's story is an interesting one. Today we're going to go to Russia, and we're going to talk about a very famous Russian, and we're not going to Russia as a democracy. We're not going to Soviet Russia, which was the Soviet Union. No, we're going way back. We're going to visit Imperial Russia. The people that sold us Alaska back in the 1800s. That Russia. That's right. We're going to go all the way back to the late early 1900s and talk about a guy named Grigory Yefimovich Novyek. Guess you probably never heard that name before. I mean, it's not one that seems to stand out, but he was known by another name. He was known famously by the name Grigory Rasputin. Rasputin, the guy that the Bee Gees? No, it was ABBA, sings a song about, and more importantly, the guy that supposedly got his you-know-what saved in a frickin' jar, and it's the size of a person's arm. I mean, I'm just saying, this guy had a legendary status for many, many years, and it was for many, many reasons, and he was definitely not the nicest guy. So let's start with Grigory's story here. You see, Grigory was born in 1869 as Grigory Yefimovich Novyek. He was born on January 22nd to a family in a small town just outside of what is now known as St. Petersburg, Russia, in the Siberian area. He became known as a mystic and lived most of his life as a traveling mystic peasant. He was schooled, and supposedly very well schooled, but Grigory Rasputin remained illiterate for most of his life. He had a reputation of being a lecherous person, and that is what earned him the name Rasputin. That's why his last name was changed. Rasputin is Russian for debauched one. Basically, they were saying, use a hoe. When he was 18, he underwent a religious conversion and actually went to live in a monastery not far from his home. He ended up perverting the religious doctrine and determined that it was when one was nearest to God would be when they were feeling the holy passionlessness. Now, the only way to reach that point, the only way to get close to God, to commune with God, was through sexual exhaustion. Yeah, that's right. He basically used the church to explain his debauchery. For obvious reasons, he didn't become a monk. So he returned to his home and then married a young woman who bore 4 children with him. But being married really didn't work for Rasputin. He wasn't the marrying kind. He had a higher calling. He was attempting to commune with God. So he headed down to Mount Athos in Greece and then over to Jerusalem, living as a peasant and gaining donations as what is called a sturit, or a self-proclaimed holy man. And he had the ability to heal the sick and predict the future. Now, I'm not sure how he had these abilities, but that's what they said of him. His wanderings eventually brought him back to St. Petersburg in 1903, where he was welcomed by the Theopin, which was a religious academy there in St. Petersburg. The circles of the court around St. Petersburg at the time were entertaining him as a mystic, and his dealings with mysticism and occult made him, well, pretty much a popular guy. But understand, comparatively, he was a filthy and unkempt person with just these brilliant eyes, but it was his mystic healing talents and his ability to see the future that interested these very religious, we're talking a bishop, we're talking archbishops, all of these people who reported back to the Pope were interested in keeping Rasputin around because of his abilities. Now, his healing talents eventually reached into the ears of the royal family. Nicholas and Alexander had a hemophiliac son who would have bleeding episodes. And eventually they called for the aid of Rasputin, who actually succeeded in fixing the kid. We don't know how he did it. Some people claim that it was his hypnotic powers. Others claim that he just had a knowledge of medicine that most didn't. Maybe he really did have some mystic powers. Who knows? Rasputin was definitely one of those people. But when he was done healing the boy, he turned to the Tsar and his wife, the Emperor and Empress, and said that the destiny of both their child, who was very sick, and the dynasty were irrevocably linked. And basically, if the child lived, the dynasty would live. They were tied together. This kind of set in motion a decade in which Rasputin's power and influence over the imperial state continued to grow. He continued to have influence. His presence became commonplace with the royal family as an advisor. And even though when he was in court, he appeared as this humble peasant and holy man, away from the court, he fell back into his former habits, being lecherous and preaching that physical contact was the only way of purifying and healing your soul, and that physical contact with him particularly would heal you. I don't know if he said this to men and women, and it doesn't say, but it does wonder, did he offer his healing abilities to everyone or just to certain people? Because he did take several mistresses and attempted to seduce wives of highly influential people. these people, of course, ran and started talking to Tsar Nicholas, like, hey, look, your holy man is trying to bang my wife. Can you do something about it? The Tsar wasn't hearing it, because the Tsar was like, this holy man is saving my son's life. Leave him alone. But the reports kept coming and kept coming. So the Tsar, for the first little bit, started sending people off, like, you don't get to talk about him. He's saving my son. You can go to Siberia. You can go over to bumfuck. He was sending them everywhere. He did not want them anywhere around if they were going to talk bad about Rasputin, because he held Rasputin in such a high manner. But by 1911, it became too much. A prime minister named Stolypin started sending the Tsar reports about Rasputin's misdeeds. It was becoming a very public scandal. So Nicholas expelled Rasputin from the royal court. He didn't want him there anymore. Yeah, this lasted about 3 months, until Alexandra, Nicholas's wife, called Rasputin back to tend to their son. And of course, because the son's health turned down, Nicholas, both worried about taking off his wife and worried about losing her son, who has already been said, if he goes, the entire dynasty falls, let Rasputin back in. This is when things got really bad. World War I is happening. So Nicholas, he packs up and he goes to command the Russian forces in September of 1915, leaving Rasputin as Alexandria's personal advisor, ministering eternal affairs for Russia. Rasputin began to have influence over the appointment of church officials, selecting cabinet members, intervening in military matters, which didn't work out for Russia's benefit. He didn't support any political group, but anyone who opposed the autocracy or Rasputin himself kind of caught the boot from Rasputin. There were several attempts to take Rasputin's life. He was stabbed, people attempted to hang him, people shot at him, all kinds of things, but they weren't successful until 1916. In 1916, a group of extreme conservatives, led by a prince who was the husband of the Tsar's niece, and the Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, who was the Tsar's cousin, they formed a conspiracy to eliminate Rasputin and save the monarchy from further scandal. Those of you that know your Russian history know that didn't happen. But on December 29th, Rasputin was invited to the prince's home. According to legend, once he was there, he was given poison wine and cakes, but he didn't die. When he didn't die, Yusupov, the duke, the prince that had invited him there, shot him. That didn't kill Rasputin. He began to run. He ran out into the courtyard, where he was shot again by the duke. He was bound, tied up, hung, and then tossed into the ice of the Neva River, where he finally died by drowning. But rumors are that the autopsy suggests that there was a third shot that actually killed him. So understand, Rasputin had been shot, stabbed, hung. Supposedly he had been drawn and quartered at one point. And, of course, in the end, he was thrown into an icy river and basically died drowning and probably hypothermic, if you think about it. Basically, he was put into an early form of suspended animation that just didn't work. After Rasputin's death, of course, Alexandra was kind of angry, to say the least, because this was the man that was keeping her son alive, and she believed that it was an attack on the autocracy itself. She began to kind of put a stranglehold on the nation, and within weeks, not only did her son die, but the entire regime was swept up in revolution, and the family was killed. And this is what led to communist Russia. the Soviet Union being formed, was this very event. So then the question is asked, well, with Alexandra pulling all this stuff, and letting Rasputin go crazy and do all the things that she wanted to do, was it her fault that everything fell, or was it Rasputin's supposedly God-given prophecy that if he wasn't there to keep the child alive, the royal house would fall? Because it did fall. It fell quickly. Today, supposedly, you can visit a church in St. Petersburg, which actually has Rasputin's ill-fated nimber still on display. Someone posted a picture of the jar that it's in with their arm next to it, and they, of course, have a large black line that covers up whatever's floating in the jar. And it's bigger than their arm. Now, does that mean that was the whole thing? You don't know, because you can't see it unless you go there and look at the jar. And quite frankly, I'm not that interested in going and looking at the jar. But if Rasputin did have these powers, it is very likely that his death is what led to the fall of the Russian Empire, the rise of the Soviet Union, and later the rise of what we have now, which is Russia under Vladimir Putin. So we can blame everything in the world, everything that's happened in the past 100 years, on this guy that liked to run around and sleep with people and lie to the Tsar, and just really was an a-hole, kind of. Anyway, folks, that's today's story. I hope that you found it informative. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you don't believe that you can achieve holy closeness to God through sexual exhaustion, because I don't know if that's how you do it, but really just don't be an ass about it. Like, seriously. Because you never know when a group of people will invite you over, poison you, shoot you, and then drown you. And possibly hang you if the story is to be believed. And it's just really not going to be fun for you, and it's not going to be fun for them either, because they're probably having to deal with, the fact that you did all this. And perhaps Rasputin's actions were guided by the fact that he was, by what the evidence suggests, seriously overcompensated at birth. I mean, really, dude, the hell? How did he not suffer a unconsciousness from blood loss with that thing? It just doesn't make much sense. But anyway, that's not the conversation that we're going to have. Again, you guys can support the podcast by going to patreon.com/The Carolina Storyteller. You can join part of the community. You can catch us on Facebook or on X. Yes, we're on both. Shoot us a message, give us a comment, tell us what you thought. Leave a comment right here. Remember to like, subscribe, and share, because that's really how the podcast grows. And, well, I guess that's it for today. Stay spooky, my friends. I'll see you next time.